Hi guys, welcome back to another episode of Tamba's Guide to Not Effing Up A-Level Biology. Today we're going to be doing genetic diversity and natural selection. The way I go over this topic is really weird. I do it in the context of food because I think it's a great way of learning natural selection. So yeah, let's just get started. So there are a few definitions that you need to know. It's going to be like the ecology topic, sadly. But nevertheless, you still have to know them if you want to get the marks. First thing we're going to go over is genetic diversity. So, also, do you like my new pens? I know, they're great. Anyway, genetic diversity. And the way we define genetic diversity is the number of different alleles of genes in a population. And I'm going to highlight the stuff that you do need to write in the exam. So, different alleles, genes, population. And remember how we defined a population, and it's basically a group of organisms of the same species in a certain geographical area. So, this is where we start talking about food, because it's Ramadan right now and I'm really hungry. So I'm going to do a little diagram here, and this is going to be here the whole time just so that stuff makes sense. And I'm going to do it in the context of KFC. I'm just going to put KFC here. And let's say this is just a random square of grass. Just do that in green. And this is some random place, like let's say like a square in a farm or something, and this is where we have a bunch of chickens. So I'm gonna denote the blue ones as the delicious extra juicy chicken, so I'm gonna scatter them all over the place. I'm also gonna have green's a bad colour for this. Let's do that in black. I'm also going to have a bunch of non-tasty, let's say dry chickens. And let's say you can denote the blue ones as the good ones. So this is going to be a blue colour, and this is going to be a black colour. So black, blue. Let's just add some dry chicken all over the place. So here we have our theoretical KFC population. There are no predators, they all have a good supply of food, and we have the delicious extra juicy blue chickens, and we also have the non-tasty dry chickens. And you can recognise the delicious ones because they're blue. Never seen a blue chicken before. And you can denote the non-tasty ones as black, so you can see them over there. And this is effectively what genetic diversity is. It's the number of different alleles of different genes in a population. So in this sense, the gene is actually denoting deliciousness. So the gene is denoting deliciousness. Oh, and also colour. We'll see why I did that, because there is no gene that denotes deliciousness, but let's just pretend for a second that there is a gene that denotes deliciousness. So we have, we're in this scenario, we're investigating one specific gene, and that one specific gene is the deliciousness gene, or the colour gene, and we can see that over here. Now, you'll remember that when we learnt about alleles, we have dominant alleles, we can have a recessive allele, and they come in pairs, and we could have two dominant, two recessives, a dominant, a recessive, and all of these alleles, they can have different forms. So I mean, that's effectively what an allele is. An allele is a different form of the same gene. So you could have an allele for amazing deliciousness or the blue colour, or you could have the allele for dry chicken or the black allele, which denotes the feathers of that particular bird. In this case, a chicken. So I mean, we've went over genetic diversity, and I think it's now time that we start applying it into the context of natural selection. So let me just rub this out over here. So the way I learned about it is natural selection leads to evolution. And evolution is basically the process of the allele frequency of a gene of a specific species changing over time. So let's go over that again. So natural selection leads to evolution, and evolution is the idea that the allele frequency of a gene of a specific species changing over time, or let's just say over generations. Now I think you all know what natural selection is. I don't really know how to define it because I feel like all the definitions are really junky. But as long as you know the general idea, what we're going to do next is how you're going to structure that in the exam paper. And that's all you need to write with the keywords in order to get all the marks for natural selection. So let's rub this out and let's start making an exam question. So let's talk about the natural selection of these KFC chickens. So let's say you have a predator, you have KFC, and let's say KFC needs to fund their corporation, make a bunch of chicken, you know, we all love good KFC chicken during Ramadan, and they're starting to hunt all the delicious, extra juicy blue chickens. For a moment, let's assume there aren't any non-tasty black dry feathered chickens, and so the first step that happens in order to introduce genetic diversity are random mutations. So that's the first point we're going to write. To introduce genetic diversity, random mutations in the gene occur which leads to the presence of different alleles. So let's say one of these chickens, the blue ones, they decide to mate with another delicious blue chicken, and they reproduce and they form a bunch of black-feathered, non-tasty, dry chickens. And that is purely due to the random mutations that can occur in the DNA base sequence. So let's add in a few dry chickens all over the place. It's really important you mention random mutations because that's effectively what's introducing that genetic diversity we see in a population. The next thing we're going to write is that if this new allele provides a selective advantage, I should have done that in blue, sorry, provides a selective advantage for the survival of the organism if this new allele provides a selective advantage for the survival of the organism and increases its chances to survive in that environment, they are more likely to survive and reproduce. So let's go over that one more time. If the new allele provides a selective advantage for the survival of the organism and increases, I basically wrote the same thing, and increases the chances of the organism to survive in that specific environment, they are more likely to survive and reproduce. Survive. You get it? Okay. So let's bring that into the context of KFC. And whenever we do a question like this, this is the general kind of formula we should be writing it in. But when you're writing it in the exam, you always have to link it back to the context. So maybe they're talking about, I don't know, cats or something. So in this case, we're talking about KFC. So this random mutation has caused for the presence of a bunch of dry chickens with black feathers. And KFC doesn't like dry chicken. No one likes dry chickens dry. So they're going to start killing all of the extra juicy blue chickens, while they leave out all of the black ones because they know they don't taste that good. So as a result, this mutation in the allele for feather colour and deliciousness has effectively caused a selective advantage for the organism to survive in this particular environment. Always this particular environment, never mentioned in general, it's always the one you're talking about. One more time. If the new allele provides a selective advantage for the survival of the organism, in that environment, they are more likely to survive and reproduce. The next thing we're going to write is that as they reproduce, they pass on the advantageous alleles to the offspring. So as we mentioned earlier, they're going to start reproducing and they're going to form more and more black-feathered alleles, black-feathered chickens, while the population of the extra juicy chickens start dying out because KFC are really killing them. So kind of messed up their population over there. I'm just gonna, there was one more keyword I think, I don't want you to miss out on anything. Oh, okay, fine. The last thing is just like a little concluding statement. So over a number of generations, the allele frequency, should have done that in blue, but I'm just gonna highlight it because I'm lazy. The allele frequency of the new gene becomes more common or frequent. So over time, KFC have effectively killed out all of these delicious chickens, and now we have a bunch of black-feathered dry chickens everywhere. So let's go over it one more time. To introduce genetic diversity, random mutations in the gene occur which lead to the presence of different alleles. If this new allele provides a selective advantage and increases the chance of the organism surviving in that environment, they are more likely to survive and reproduce. Those are the two keywords. As they reproduce, they pass on their advantageous alleles to the offspring. Over a number of generations, the allele frequency of the new gene becomes more frequent or more common. The last thing I'm going to go over is, what's this one? Sure. What type of new adaptations natural selection can lead to? I'm just going to rub this off. So natural selection can lead to three different kind of adaptations. So the first adaptation is it could be behavioral. So it might lead to changes in the way that organisms interact with each other. So maybe changes in their courtship behavior. They might flap their wings.